Hi everyone. There's a quote I've heard often, the best revenge is living well. But I want to go a little deeper. I want to talk about how we learn, grow, and reclaim ourselves when we've been hurt. And I want to do it in a way that's not about pretending we're fine, but about actually healing, because there is nothing more powerful than a person who has faced their pain and chosen to rise anyway. Let's begin with this truth. Revenge is a reaction, healing is a response. When someone hurts us, whether through betrayal, abandonment, cruelty, or even just silence, our instinct is often to strike back, to show them how wrong they were. But here's what I've learned through research and through my own experience: retaliation might feel good for a second, but it doesn't heal. In fact, it often keeps us stuck in the story of the wound. Real revenge, the kind that transforms, comes from healing so fully that the pain no longer defines you. And to do that, we need boundaries. Set boundaries, not bitterness. People often think boundaries are about keeping others out. But boundaries are actually about protecting what's sacred within us. Bitterness says, "I'll never trust again." Boundaries say, "I will be careful about who I trust, but I will not close my heart." That distinction is everything. When we choose boundaries over bitterness, we take back control without becoming what hurt us. The next part is maybe the hardest and the most beautiful. Choose transformation over transaction. When we hurt, it's tempting to think, "They owe me." And maybe they do. But what if the most powerful thing you could do isn't to get even, but to grow beyond the need to? Transformation means turning the pain into purpose, not for them, not to prove anything, but for you. It's saying, what they did no longer has the power to dictate who I become. Finally, this. Let your wholeness be the answer. You don't have to show anyone how strong you are. You just have to be it. Live with purpose. Love with intention. Show up in the world as someone who knows their worth. That is the best revenge. Not to harm, not to prove, but to be so deeply rooted in who you are that no one can shake your peace. So if you've been hurt, and let's be honest, we all have, I want you to remember this. You don't need revenge. You need healing. You need truth. You need courage. And when you have those, truly no one can take anything from you. When someone hurts us, the instinct to strike back can feel almost automatic. It's like our nervous system goes into defense mode, and our brain whispers, "They need to feel what you felt." It's the raw human response: anger, betrayal, sadness, and sometimes even humiliation, all tangled into a moment where we just want to do something to make it even. That desire to retaliate, to get even, is what I call a reaction. It's immediate, emotional, and often comes from a place of pain, not power. And here's the thing: pain demands to be seen. When we react in revenge, we're often not trying to destroy the other person, we're trying to express just how deeply we've been wounded. We want anyone to understand the depth of that hurt. But what revenge actually does is keep us connected to the pain, not freed from it. Revenge, at its core, is often an attempt to hand our pain back to the person who gave it to us. It says, "You hurt me, so now you carry it." But emotional pain doesn't transfer like that. You can't give it away by giving it back. What happens instead is that we end up holding on tighter, because revenge doesn't release the wound, it reinforces it. It keeps us stuck in a loop of reaction, a loop where the original hurt continues to echo through every choice we make. And even when the act of revenge gives us a temporary high, a fleeting sense of power or righteousness, it's just that fleeting. It fades. And often, what lingers is not relief, but regret or emptiness. Now, contrast that with healing. Healing is not a reaction. Healing is a response. A conscious, intentional, grounded decision to tend to the wound instead of re-inflicting it on others or on ourselves. Healing takes courage. It means sitting with pain long enough to understand it. It means asking ourselves hard questions like, what part of me was affected most by this, and what do I need to feel safe again? Healing isn't passive, it's an active choice. It's not weakness. In fact, it's one of the strongest, bravest things a person can do. Choosing healing means stepping out of the cycle of pain and reaction. It means saying, "I will not let this hurt define my future choices." And that is incredibly hard, because our culture often glorifies revenge. From movies to social media to everyday conversations, we hear the message that strength equals payback. But true strength is quiet. It doesn't need an audience. True strength is in the person who carries pain with grace, who transforms it into wisdom, who walks away not because they are weak but because they are grounded in their worth. That kind of response, the healing response, is slow. It doesn't happen overnight. It asks us to be patient, to feel things fully, to ask for help, to be vulnerable. And that vulnerability? That's where our real power lies. Vulnerability is not about being exposed, it's about being seen. And healing, more than anything else, is about allowing ourselves to be seen by ourselves. To say, this hurt. It changed me. But it will not define me. That's not just a powerful statement, it's an act of radical self-respect. When we heal, we reclaim agency. We say, my story does not belong to the person who hurt me. My story is mine to write. That's the difference between being reactive and being responsive. One is rooted in pain, the other in purpose. Now, that doesn't mean we ignore what happened. It doesn't mean we pretend the pain didn't occur. In fact, part of healing is fully acknowledging what was done, how it made us feel, and what it cost us. We're not talking about spiritual bypassing or toxic positivity. We're talking about owning the pain and then deciding how we want to live in the aftermath of it. And the most liberating choice we can make is the one that moves us toward wholeness, not retaliation. Here's something I often say, people who hurt you already showed you who they are. Your job is not to match them, your job is to stay true to yourself. Your integrity is not a currency for revenge. It's a boundary, a foundation. And when you respond with healing, with intention, with the clarity of someone who knows their worth, you're not just rising above, you're moving forward. You're building a life that isn't tethered to the harm done to you. And that, more than any act of revenge, speaks volumes. So when you find yourself aching for closure, for justice, for revenge, pause. Ask yourself, what do I really want? Most of the time, the answer is peace, safety, understanding, healing. And none of those come from hurting someone else. They come from doing the deep inner work of turning pain into power, not performance. They come from choosing your future over your fury. Healing is not flashy. It's quiet, steady, and often invisible to the outside world. But it creates something revenge never can: freedom. Revenge keeps you locked to the past. Healing invites you into the present, and prepares you for a better future. So yes, revenge is a reaction, fast, emotional, and fleeting. But healing? Healing is a response, intentional, empowering, and lasting. And when we choose to respond instead of react, we don't just change the narrative. We reclaim it. We make the brave decision to let the hurt be a chapter, not the whole story. And that is the most courageous thing you can do. When we're hurt, when someone crosses a line, betrays our trust, or leaves us feeling unseen or disrespected, we often feel this deep need to protect ourselves. That's natural. That's human. But what we choose to do next can change everything. Some of us put up walls and call it strength. Some of us shut down and call it self-respect. Some of us hold on to the hurt, wear it like armor, and convince ourselves that bitterness is a kind of justice. But here's the truth: bitterness doesn't protect you. It hardens you. It doesn't set you free. It binds you to the very thing that wounded you in the first place. There is a profound difference between bitterness and boundaries. Bitterness says, I'll never let anyone close to me again. Boundaries say, I get to decide who has access to me and how. Bitterness is reactive. Boundaries are proactive. Bitterness comes from unprocessed pain, from a belief that holding on to anger somehow balances the scales. But in reality, it only adds weight to your own heart. Bitterness is loud, sharp, and often lonely. Boundaries, though they're rooted in clarity, compassion, and courage. They're the quiet structure that helps us move through the world with integrity and self-respect. Setting boundaries isn't about cutting people off or punishing them. It's not about proving a point or making someone feel guilty. It's about honoring your own capacity, emotional, mental, physical, and spiritual. It's about recognizing what you need in order to feel safe, seen, and whole. And maybe most importantly, boundaries are about keeping yourself in alignment with your values. When someone hurts us, we often think the next move has to be about them, confronting them, blocking them, calling them out, or cutting them off. But real boundary work isn't about managing other people. It's about managing yourself. It's about knowing what you're available for and what you're not. Bitterness, on the other hand, makes everything about the other person. It says, because of what they did, I'll never trust again. Because of how they treated me, I'll make sure nobody gets close. But when we operate from that place, we end up building our identity around our pain. We let someone else's actions shape our future. We give away our power without even realizing it. Bitterness can feel like strength, especially when we are still hurting. It gives us something to hold onto. But it's not solid ground. It's a slow poison, one that numbs the pain, but also numbs the joy, the connection, the hope. The powerful thing about boundaries is that they are deeply connected to self-worth. You can't set healthy boundaries unless you believe you're worthy of protection, respect, and care. You have to believe that your time, your energy, your emotional safety matter not more than others, not less, but equally. And here's the challenge, many of us were never taught that. We were taught to be nice, to keep the peace, to avoid conflict. We were told that saying no is rude or selfish. So instead, we said yes when we wanted to say no, we stayed when we wanted to leave, we gave when we were depleted. And eventually, that pattern wears down our sense of self. That's when bitterness starts to creep in, when we feel like we're giving more than we're receiving, but we don't feel empowered to change it. Boundaries are a way of saying, I matter, too. They allow us to stay soft without becoming fragile. They let us keep our hearts open without being defenseless. And maybe most importantly, they help us stay close to people we love even when it's hard. Because the truth is, we don't always need to cut people off. Sometimes we just need to redefine the relationship. Sometimes we need to say, I love you, and I also need space. Or, I care about you, and this behavior isn't okay with me. Those kinds of conversations are tough. They require honesty and vulnerability. But they also lead to healthier, more authentic connections, the kind where we don't have to shrink or pretend or overextend ourselves just to be accepted. When we choose boundaries over bitterness, we choose responsibility over resentment. We take ownership of what we allow, what we tolerate, what we engage in. And that doesn't mean we'll never get hurt again. But it means that next time, we'll have the tools to respond, not react. We'll know how to check in with ourselves, how to speak up, how to walk away when necessary. That is real power, not the power to control others, but the power to stay rooted in ourselves, no matter what's happening around us. And yes, sometimes it's easier said than done. Sometimes it feels safer to stay angry. Sometimes forgiveness feels out of reach. That's okay. You don't have to rush the process. You just have to start with one question: what do I need in order to feel safe and whole again? That's where boundaries begin, not from judgment or fear, but from self-awareness. And once you start asking that question, you begin to reconnect with yourself. You begin to shift the story. You start to release the bitterness and replace it with clarity, with peace, with power. So no, setting boundaries isn't about becoming cold or distant. It's about becoming clear and grounded. It's about making decisions that honor your healing, not your hurt. Because you deserve to live with a heart that's whole, not hardened. You deserve to be protected, not guarded. You deserve to feel free, not fearful. And the path to all of that doesn't start with revenge. It starts with boundaries. And that is not just healing. That is wisdom. There's a point in our healing journey where we have to make a choice. It's not always loud or dramatic. Sometimes it comes in the stillness, in the quiet moments where the pain doesn't scream anymore but lingers like an ache in the background. That's where the choice lies, between trying to get even or trying to grow. Between making someone else feel what we felt or choosing to become someone we can be proud of. That's the crossroads where we decide whether we want a transaction or a transformation. When someone hurts us, it's natural to want something back: an apology, an explanation, maybe even just acknowledgement. We want them to understand the depth of the impact they had, and sometimes we even want them to carry the same weight we've been carrying. That desire is real, and it's valid. It's not wrong to want justice. It's not wrong to want closure. The problem comes when our healing becomes dependent on it. When we say, I'll feel better once they say sorry, or I'll move on when they suffer too. That's when healing becomes a transaction, a kind of emotional bargain where we believe that in order for us to be okay, they have to do something first. But the truth is, most of the time, that transaction never happens. People don't always apologize. They don't always admit they were wrong. Sometimes they don't even see the damage they caused. And if we've built our healing on a transaction that's never going to come, then we stay stuck. Waiting. Holding back our growth, our peace, our wholeness until someone else gives us something they may never be capable of giving. That's not power. That's postponing our own freedom. Transformation is different. Transformation says, even if I never get the closure I thought I needed, I can still become whole. It's not easy. It requires us to shift from focusing on what we lost to focusing on what we can become. It means asking ourselves different questions, not how do I get back at them, but what can I learn from this? Not how do I make them hurt too, but how do I carry this pain without letting it harden me? Transformation doesn't erase what happened, but it changes what it means. It turns wounds into wisdom. It takes the power we gave away in that moment of hurt and calls it back home. And this transformational work is deeply personal. It's not performative. It doesn't need to be seen or validated by anyone. It doesn't live on social media or in dramatic confrontations. It lives in the small choices we make every day. The decision to forgive even when they haven't apologized. The choice to keep loving, even when love once hurt. The act of rising again, not to prove anything to anyone, but simply because we deserve to live free from the weight of someone else's actions. We live in a culture that often values performance over depth. A culture that wants quick fixes, clear winners and losers, and dramatic redemption arcs. But real healing is not a spectacle. It doesn't happen in public. It happens in the deeply personal, often lonely work of choosing integrity over revenge, softness over bitterness, and growth over validation. Transaction might give us a momentary feeling of satisfaction, the high of the last word, the comfort of being right, but transformation gives us something much deeper. It gives us peace. It gives us perspective. It gives us the ability to look at ourselves and say, I like who I'm becoming. One of the most painful truths about being hurt is realizing that there may never be a moment where the person who hurt us realizes what they did. But one of the most powerful truths is that we don't need that moment to begin healing. We don't need their understanding to reclaim our power. We don't need their regret to create a meaningful life. Transformation teaches us that closure is not something someone else gives us, it's something we give ourselves, moment by moment, as we choose to live beyond the pain. That doesn't mean we deny our anger or bypass our grief. It means we feel everything deeply, fully, without rushing, and still choose to move forward. It means we stop waiting for someone else to make it right and start asking ourselves, what does right look like for me now? That's a hard question. It's a vulnerable one. Because it means we are no longer defining our healing by what someone else does or doesn't do. We are defining it by who we are and who we want to become. Transformation over transaction also means letting go of the scoreboard. No more keeping track of who owes what. No more trying to balance the emotional books. Because healing is not about settling accounts, it's about restoring wholeness. And that's not something anyone else can do for us. It's not about being better than the person who hurt us. It's about being better than the bitterness that wants to keep us small. It's about rising, not for revenge, but for the sake of our own aliveness. At the end of the day, transformation is a quiet kind of revolution. It says, I am not what happened to me. I am what I choose to become in the wake of it. It doesn't need applause or approval. It just needs intention, honesty, and the courage to keep going even when the pain still whispers. So if you're waiting for the apology that hasn't come, the justice that hasn't arrived, the moment of reckoning that still hasn't shown up, know this, you don't have to wait anymore. You can begin the transformation now. You can write a new chapter, not because they made it right, but because you deserve to be free. Not because you got what you were owed, but because you've decided to grow anyway. That's not weakness. That's power. That's not surrender. That's freedom. And it's yours. There comes a point in your healing where you realize that you don't need to prove anything to anyone. Not your strength. Not your worth. Not even your pain. That's when something powerful begins to happen. You stop living in reaction to what broke you and start living in response to what builds you. You stop waiting for others to change, to apologize, to notice. You stop chasing validation or closure from the outside world. And instead, you begin to anchor into something much deeper: your own wholeness. Wholeness doesn't mean you were never hurt. It doesn't mean you didn't carry grief or heartbreak or betrayal. It means that even with the cracks, you are complete. It means you've made peace with the fact that the pain is a part of your story, but not the whole of who you are. It means that instead of proving your healing, you embody it. You become it. And that becomes your answer: not bitterness, not revenge, not silence, not performance, but your wholeness. There is a quiet kind of power in being whole. It's not loud. It doesn't scream or demand attention. It doesn't need to convince anyone of anything. It just is. It walks into a room with presence, not to dominate, but to simply be. That kind of wholeness is magnetic because it's real. It's rooted. It's not trying to be liked or understood or pitied. It knows who it is and why it matters. And the people who are meant for you, the ones who see you, respect you, and meet you at your depth, will recognize it instantly. But here's what no one really talks about: how hard it is to reach that place. How it requires you to untangle yourself from all the stories you've been told about needing to be more, do more, hide more. How it asks you to look at your own patterns, your own survival strategies, and choose differently. Wholeness asks you to show up, not as a version of yourself designed to keep people comfortable, but as your true self. And that kind of courage is hard-earned. It's not a moment, it's a practice. When you let your wholeness be the answer, you stop explaining yourself to people who are committed to misunderstanding you. You stop trying to win people back who made a choice to let you go. You stop shrinking in rooms that can't hold your truth. And you stop engaging in arguments that cost your peace. You realize that your energy is sacred. Your time is sacred. Your emotional safety is sacred. And you begin to protect those things, not because you're guarded, but because you're grounded. Being whole means you no longer outsource your sense of value. You stop looking for worthiness in someone else's hands. You stop believing that love has to come with conditions or that acceptance has to come at the cost of authenticity. You start to see that being whole doesn't mean you have all the answers. It means you're no longer looking outside of yourself to be okay. You've come home to your own heart. You've learned to hold space for your own emotions. You've learned that peace isn't found in the absence of conflict, but in the presence of alignment. And yes, there are days where it still stings. Days where the memory flares up. Days where the old habits want to pull you back into seeking, chasing, proving. That's okay. Healing isn't linear. Being whole doesn't mean you don't feel pain anymore. It means you don't lose yourself in it. It means you know how to return to yourself. Again and again. With compassion. With grace. With honesty. It means that even in the face of rejection, loss, or confusion, you remember that your worth was never on the line. There's a quiet confidence that comes when you're no longer performing for approval. When you can speak your truth without needing to be right. When you can let go without needing the last word. When you can forgive not because they deserve it but because you deserve to be free. That's what wholeness gives you. The freedom to choose peace without pretending the pain didn't happen. The freedom to walk away not out of bitterness, but because you're choosing yourself. The freedom to be soft and strong at the same time. When you let your wholeness be the answer, you start to notice that some things just don't touch you the way they used to. The passive-aggressive comments. The people who ghosted you. The situations that once triggered your deepest insecurities. They might still sting, but they don't stick. They don't have a place to land anymore. Because your identity is no longer built on being liked, needed, or understood. It's built on truth. On presence. On love that doesn't abandon you, starting with the love you give yourself. So if you've been wondering how to respond, how to handle the people who hurt you, how to make sense of the chapters that didn't end the way you hoped, maybe the answer isn't in doing more. Maybe it's in being more. More whole. More steady. More honest. Maybe your growth is the response. Maybe your peace is the answer. Maybe your wholeness is the loudest, clearest, most powerful statement you can make. You don't need to beg for closure. You don't need to return to conversations that drain your soul. You don't need to prove that you've moved on. Just live. Just be. Let your peace speak for itself. Let your presence carry the weight of the story you've survived. Let your joy shine without apology. Let your boundaries teach people how to treat you. Let your healing ripple into everything you touch. You are not the wound. You are the healer. You are not the rejection. You are the rebuilder. You are not what they did to you. You are what you've done with it. And the most beautiful, powerful, and liberating thing you can do is to let your wholeness be the answer. Thank you so much for watching, my friends. If you liked this message, don't forget to support the channel. Your presence means the world to me. Until next time, take care and keep growing.